Masibulise kubo bonke ababukeli be-Fire in My Bones Evangelism Ministry. Namhlanje sinomakhwekhwetha sineqhala sinomfundisi inceku, man of God, uPastor Phumzile Elijah Vena. Khawubulise ke mfundisi babukeli.
Mandibulise kubabukeli bonke be-Fire in My Bones Ministry, friends and colleagues, people who are invited and those who logged in. Base babona bangaba namhlanje i-Fire in My Bones is hosting me. Ndibulisa bonke abantu, ndibulisa abantu ababukeleyo ngoku, and I also greet those who will watch later. Ngegama lika Kristu Nkosi yethu. Amen.
Amen. Mhlobam sisuka kude sobabili. Siphume elokishini, siphume eKasi thina. Yabo, ndiyavuya ke xa ndibona abantu baseKasi besenza izinto zenzeke.
Yes.
Ndifuna ke ngoku before siqalise sithethe ngale ncwadi yakho ye-Leadership Made Simple, ukhe usivulele ngomthandazo, uzazise emveni koko ukuthi ungubani na.
Yes, ndicela sicemeleni kwezo ndawo sekuzo. Malusi wethu othandekayo sekhaya semazulwini ngoyise weNkosi yethu Yesu Kristu. Ngeli xesha Thixo wethu sinombulungu sethu ongazenzisiyo for this great opportunity, Thixo kumkani wethu, of ministering Nkosi yethu ilizwi lakho to your people. Talk to us once and we hear you, Thixo kumkani wethu, speak to us twice, Thixo kumkani. Influence our thinking, our minds, our perceptions, and our behavior and attitude in life, and make us better than we kumkani wethu ngenxa yelizwi lakho. We're about kumkani to study this program Nkosi yethu, influence it, Thixo lomoya oyingcwele ngoKristu Nkosi yethu ebuya kamsinya. Amen.
Amen.
Yes. Igama lam ndinguPhumzile wakwaVena, ndingowalapha eGqeberha eBhayi lombathwa.
Yes sir.
Lambathwa ngabalaziyo. Ndihlala kwindawo kuthiwa kwaZakhele, apha kwaZakhele kwindawo encinci exabizwa kwaNdokwenza. Ndihlala khona apha ngokwaBoxer. Originally ndisuka elalini ebomvu ngaphayana eNew Brighton ngasestishini. And then ke ndasuka ndayohlala kwaZakhele, so ndihlala khona ngoku.
Inkosi Mhlobam, masibambe apha. Funa usichazele ngokwemfundo, isikolo ufunde phi, wafunda phi?
Yes, ndiqale ukufunda eBJ Mnyanda. Kala xesha le-riots. U-A kunye no-B kwakunye no-1 ndimfunde eBJ Mnyanda. Because ye-riots zangala xesha, the mid-80s, and I drop out. Actually, I did not drop everyone. Saye zavalwa isikolo, and then emveni koko ndayofunda eKK Ncwane. Ndayofunda eKK Ncwane. From eKK Ncwane ndayofunda ndapasa u2. I don't want to brag or boast, but ngala xesha akusanyuselwa ke zange ndinyuselwe because of age, because of my smarts. Ndasuka apho ndayofunda eZikweni lower primary school. From eZikweni ndifunda eZikweni u3 no5, u4 zange ndimfunde baye baninyusela bathi I'm too smart for that class. Even koko ndasuka apho ndayofunda eQaphelane High School u6 uthi matric yam. Emveni koko ndahamba ndayofunda eVista University. Ndifunde for 3 years eVista. Apha ngaseMission Vale campus. Koko ndasuka ndayofunda ke ngoku layers wangumuntu wonke, ndayofunda eSolusi University njengomfundisi wase-Seventh Day Adventist Church.
Yes, masibulele ke mfundisi ngalo ngcaciso leyo. Into endifuna uyiqonda ke ngoku, njeba uzawuthetha nge-leadership lena, yintoni yona i-leadership qala? Sifuna ke mfundisi uyenze simple asifele eziyunivesithi.
Yes. There are different definitions of leadership. The most famous definition of leadership, leadership is influence. It is defined as just influence, influencing people to do what you think or what your vision is. That is what leadership is in a nutshell. It is to influence people. And then I do have my own definition of leadership, which endibhale by Untitled Chapter 8, collective leadership. I call leadership a gathering of thinking minds. In other words, to me, I define leadership as a group of people whose minds are activated for the betterment of the organization or for the land of Sebenzakoy.
Ndiyayithanda kakhulu le definition yakho ba ithetha nge-influence, ayithethi ngoforsa, because i-leaders kuthiwa zii-dictators ezi ziyabanyanzela abantu mabenze le nto ziyifunayo. Xa u-influencer awunyanzeli.
No.
Ndiyayithanda ke loo definition leyo. Ndifuna ke ngoku njengoba uzawuthetha nge-leadership usichazele uba ukhe wa-leadership wena qala wazi ntoni nge-leadership. Nawo amava wayo.
I can call myself an insider when it comes to leadership. I was fortunate enough when I was growing up. Ndisukela nebomvu ndohlala kwanto xa ndihlala kanto kwenza kukule mibutho asekuhlaleni. Le mibutho asekuhlaleni yayimi-3 ndandikhokhela oyi-1. But xa imibutho imeasure izawukwenziwa idibana omi-3, and guess who was the first president of that measure? I was in my teens or my early 20s back then, but I was already president of the youth club yakandokwenza as a whole, about hundreds and hundreds of youth aphayana. Ngeli xesha ndikhokhela ekuhlaleni, I'm also the chairperson ye-SRC eQaphelane. I'm the president of the students eQaphelane. Now okuphuma kwami eQaphelane then ndayofunda eVista. I was also involved kwizinto ze-COSAS. I always boast that even the current mayor was my comrade during those days. We were comrades in student movements. But and then I became I became a church youth leader, and all of those things. Those things actually shaped my thinking, actually my leadership skills. They sharpened them. Then I went to study for a theology. Then I came back, and then I led real people in a real world. Yes.
Ndiyayithanda le nto uyitshoyo because xa ndijongile wena i-leadership kuxhomekeka i-POV, like i-point of views zabantu. Uyakwazi uyijonga kwicala le-politic i-leadership, omnye uyijonga kwicala le-business okanye kwicala le-academia okanye kwicala le-spiritual, yabo. Asizokwazi ke namhlanje uzijonga zonke ezinkalo ze-leadership. Namhlanje ndifuna sifocus kule i-spiritual.
Okay, the spiritual leadership.
Yeah, spiritual leadership. Kubalulekile kakhulu ke imbangi nditsho ngoba I believe ukuthi eyona leader yakhe yanyathela apha emhlabeni nguYesu. Zonke ezinye leaders ezi zikhala phansi soze silenze ixesha apha kuye. That's why ndifuna siye kula sithatha umzekelo kwelicala le-spiritual.
Sure.
Yes, and enye into ke umfundisi. Ngoku ke mfundisi ndifuna usichazele after ugqibe yonke lento yesikolo yofunda ngapha nangapha uye wayoseva phi naphi.
Yes, i-conference yandithatha yandisa eHumansdorp phansi komfundisi uVatyana. From umfundisi uVatyana I remember yayindim nomfundisi uNgqina notata uMatros, uShawn Matros. He is actually the man owandifundisa into eninzi about uvangelo. Nokufunda incwadi nokubhala incwadi, because it's like ndandihleli izinyawo zikaGamaliyeli exesha likatata uMatros. And then 3 months down the line, the conference yandisusa yandisa kuQumbu. I spend much of my time ke ngoku phaa ndikhokela kuQumbu district of which ufika kwam phana sayitshintsha from uQumbu district to Mhlonhlo district. Then from there ndabheka ke ngoku eKomani, from eKomani eCofimvaba, actually the whole Transkei. Yes.
Ngoku ke ngifuna singene kwi-content yale ncwadi usingaye lo.
Yes.
Ufuna usichazele uba yintoni ekubangela ubhale le ncwadi, yintoni injongo zakho?
Actually, when I wrote le ncwadi, there are a number of things that influenced me or inspired me to write this book. Xana ufunda phana what the book intends to do, ikhonda wetshoyo phayana. You know, as young leaders growing up, there were many mistakes esazenzayo. Sometimes that is by impulse, you know, through impulse, that you are thick-headed, you think that you know everything. And not that you know everything, but also that you take for granted people around you simply because you know them. But after ndihleli ndaqoma ndibhale incwadi so that leaders that come after me, they cannot do the mistakes that endazenzayo mna. So that number two, not only they do not do the mistakes, but rather bayazi bangaba what is expected of them if then banetayxa ibizwa uyinkokheli. And then okwesithathu, so that the leaders, so that those who aspire to be leaders also bayibone leadership not njengento ngumthwalo, because we always say that leadership into enzima. But in leadership made simple, I'm trying to simplify some of the big terms esetyenziswayo phana, so that abantu bayibone bangaba being a leader is actually a joyride.
Hayi ke Mfundisi, ngifuna usichazele le ncwadi yakho yohluke njani kwezinye incwadi ze-leadership.
Yes, that's a very good question. Okokuqala, in my book, I tried as much as possible to avoid the obvious technical leadership terms that are used kwincwadi mainstream books. Secondly, kule ncwadi lena ndizame kakhulu ukubalansisa leadership so that ingabi too spiritual, ingabi too political, ingabi too academic, so that umuntu oyifundayo, even those who are academicals, even those who are just laymen, even those who are just simple-minded people can be able to grasp some of the terms esoloko zibekwa kwa leadership. In other words, le incwadi yohlobo bangaba yona izibhalwe in a simplest form of leadership. So it and yes.
Icacile ba iyalandela igama layo. Kuthiwa leadership made simple.
Yes.
Izawutsho ifikelele nakwezinye leaders ezingakhange ziye esikolweni sikwazi uunderstand leadership le. Xana ke ngoku ke sizawungena kule ncwadi lena, ufuna usichazele uba umongolo wayo ngephi imizekelo nosenzela yona pha, because ngokuthetha kwethu uthe ine-chapters zingaphi kane? Ziyi-34. Wathi yohlulwe to ii-sections ezintathu. Funa ke ngoku kuba sifuna uyenze simple ifikelele nakwi-layman, usinike examples nje pha eBhayibhileni abantu onoqonda uyabayamanisa nezi chapter.
For instance, that's a very good question. There is a chapter there at figurative leadership. In that chapter, I discuss two kinds of people that are a danger to a leader. Those two people, the first ones, are those who were leading before you. And the second people are those people, advisors. That is people around the leader. Now, those who were leading before you, one of the dangers that you have is that they lead from the grave. you find out that sometimes if you lead a group of 100 people, and then you were leading before, and maybe 12 months ago, you find out then these people bangaxoli kakhulu, bangonwabi kakhulu. Then you find that ngokuba ngaba kukho inhlanganiso kuyavotwa, and then people there is a strong resistance against you. Ndiyakulombuzo wakho. The second people, actually in an organization, there are two structures. There is a silent structure and there is a legal structure. That is the one that is led by this man or by this woman. But upper flooring, there is another structure that is operating. And then the second people and are people who are leading by proximity. I call them, they lead by proximity. There's umzekelo of the son of Jeroboam. When King Jeroboam died, his son took over the reign. And the old men, that is the leaders, the elders of the people of Israel, came to him and said to him, young man, utata wako was very hard on us. Please, uzungabi harsh and hard on us. Please be lenient. He went to his friends and said to them, these old men came to me and said, my father was hard on them. Man be lenient kubo. And his friends said to him, Ababantu are cry babies. When lanziniya ipinda pindeka katatu. In other words, even this bad influence, very figurative, whereby a leader is not leading, but it is the people around the leader that are leading, not him. And then it gave in that chapter, be careful of just becoming a figure, a shadow, just a ceremonial leader. Signature, but we puppet, but we puppet without an influence, because you cannot lead people if you do not influence them. Be careful of those two people. In other words, embrace them, but take decisions so that you don't become just a puppet in the throne.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yes, ndithi ndokucinga apha engqondweni yam ilida yokuqala ethi che phaa eBhayibhileni ngulaa mfo kuthiwa uSawule wayenyulwa as a king. Abantu besithi bathi uphathwa nguThixo, ulidishwa nguThixo. Laa mfo unobomdibanisa neyiphi leadership kwezi chapters zakho, leadership style?
Yes. Lo mfo nguSamuel, to be exact. nguSamuel uthetha ngaye. There is a chapter there called Alienative Leadership. In that chapter, I discuss that in as much that leadership is a good thing, but the downside of leadership is that you become a lonely figure. Now, if you read the story, Samuel, baya kuye, the leaders, and that is not the leaders, but the elders, baya kuye. But kuye, look, man, you are an old man now. By implying that he was an old man, they were actually saying to him, step back and give the next generation. Can you believe that the impact that it had on him? Because he was a lonely figure, a lonely man. Because he cannot lead anymore. He's an old man. You understand? Now that is what leadership is all about. In as much that it brings status, prospects, it brings all the good things, the praise and all of that. But the downside of it, people will always try to sideline you, simply because ikona into ethi ebantwini xa uyinkokheli yethu you should be 1.5 meters away from us. That is what they did to him, Samuel. Yes.
So lo mfo uSawule yena ngulo bengafuna ukuba obedient apha kuThixo.
Yes.
Efuna uyosacrifice, and then uye waqhubeka elidisha wabe umoya kodwa umkile kuye, uyayibona?
Yes.
So iye kuyenzeka ukuthi mhlambi umuntu uyalidisha ebandleni abe kodwa phambi koThixo uThixo enganelisekanga ngaye.
That is what is happening in many leaders today. You see, there is a chapter there, at redemptive leadership. In redemptive leadership, that I say you cannot lead people if you're not a spiritual man.
Yeah.
Because when you lead me, you must also lead me spiritually.
Yeah.
Because leadership is not about strategies, executive decision, all of those things. It is also about you leading me to God.
Yes, sir.
Now in redemptive leadership, I discuss exactly that it is possible to lead. Then this is what is called, you are leading me by head knowledge.
Yeah.
By what you know. While the spirit that should influence me to be better is not there. That is why you find that many people resist. There is a resistance because there is no spirit that influences the people to be submissive to your leadership. Because as soon as the spirit withdraws, therefore it means that when and your leadership, then then those are politics ke ngoku. Ngamandla akho. Ibisithi verse, not by might, not by power, but by the spirit.
Yes, sir. Kukho umfo ke ngokuthiwa nguKing David naye wayeleader pha. Ukufosha kweliphi icala yena?
In my book, King David ulidisha. This is a very good question. There is a chapter in my book called Positive Leadership. Positive leadership. Now, let me give you a direct quote from that book. I say, Payana, leaders like generals, and they lead their troops. Leaders, they lead their troops to new heights of positive thinking. Because leaders do not allow a phase to phase them out. Now, King David, he was chased by his brothers, he was chased by King Saul, he was chased by Absalom, he was chased by his chief advisor who insulted him on the streets. Almost everyone, he was chased. But he had 600 men. And these men said to him, let's go and kill them.
Yeah.
But King David refused. But King David, he was a hungry man. He was a thirsty man. He was a tired man. He was mentally tired, physically tired, and spiritually tired.
Yeah.
But you find that he was the one, the tired king, was the one who was busy encouraging his troops, taking them to the new heights of positive thinking. Can I give you a direct quote from my book?
Info sisezabuyela ezo zinto.
So King David, I regard him as a positive leader.
Okay. Kukho la mfo kuthiwa Moses wayeleader naye ehlonitshiweyo pha bekho le kuthiwa nguJoshua. So uthini ngabo bona?
There is a chapter there called Distinctive Leadership. I discuss those two men. That inasmuch that these are two generations. Now when Moses was on the mountain, abantu benqula ithole golide phayana ezantsi. Now xana ufunda iBhayibhile, ithi iBhayibhile on top of the mountain there were two men. YayinguJoshua, the son of Nun. He was a teenager by that. He was a middle-aged man. Remember that he was 40 years old. Then 40 years yakhe from enhlango uyokutsho phayana. So nobody exactly knows how old was he ngala xesha wayephayana entabeni. But ngoku unyana kaNuni uYoshua was the one uThixo that exposed him to izinto ze-leadership. There were other 70 men, Korah, no Dathan, no Abiram, but they uThixo kangababizela on top of the mountain. But xana uMoses ebhubha kwincwadi yeDeuteronomy chapter 31, iBhayibhile ithi ke ngoku wathambisa before angene uYoshua, so that ibe nguye omnika iBaton to continue the pilgrimage or the journey to the promised land. Now xana efika from the borders, there's a promised land, then there was a transition. Moses now was a dead prophet, but now there was a new leadership now, ekhokhelwa nguYoshua. Now uYoshua, although he grew up under the leadership of Moses, but he was supposed to be distinct, to be different, although he continues the legacy, the program of God, but he had to rubber stamp his own leadership style, because awukwazi uba inkokheli ube reflection of your mentor. You should be better than your mentor, because mentors always want the mentees to be better than them. Even myself, Nonyana Pumezo, I'm not 17 years, I always tell him, I want you to be better than me. If I had a degree, he must become a doctor. And then abantwana should be better than him, because in as much that Joshua was exposed to the leadership of Moses, but Joshua still had to be distinct. There must be something that is different from Moses. So there is a chapter with distinctive leadership.
Yes, I think naphana kwezi characters zimbini siyayibona la nto kuthiwa mentorship. uJoshua ementoreshwa Moses before abe leader. Uyabona? Ibaluleke kangakanani into ba ube ne-mentor.
There is a book that I wrote, Power of Positive Leadership. Phayana ndenza umzekelo, ndikhulela phantsi kotata uMamase eDingelihle, notata uMene. When I was about 20, 19 or 21, I can't remember, I was a bit younger back then. Ndibuza kuye, why abantu bakuthuka bayakutyhola bakwenza yonke into noyicinga, but zange ndokuva complain not a single day? Why ungazi complain? You know, his response was rather dismissive and very unkind, very dismissive. But he loved me. This is what he said to me. Uthi Phumzile, hamba uzondibuze lo mbuzo, in 15 years time I will give you an answer. I felt like Paul and he's being dismissive. Ndithe xa ndiqalisa ukhokhela ekuhlaleni enkonzweni naphi na, then I did not want his answer, because ndayifumana. He was saying actually to me, I am not going to give you a verbal answer. I am going to give you a chance to experience what I'm busy experiencing. Because in leadership, challenges are unavoidable. You can't run away from them. You can't run away from them. And then this is what he said to me. And then he mentored me at the distance by not teaching me the leadership skills, by showing me how leadership is supposed to be.
Yes, sir.
He never complained, never murmured, never bickered. He kept his mouth shut. If we could feel that man besikhokelwa up, but he was no more. So in other words, it is almost impossible to lead without being first mentored. Ngoba a mentor is the person who saw it all, who heard it all, who have done it all. And a mentor will never be envy of you. Who's a tell exactly this is what you should expect. I'm fortunate. I had a front seat row. And one thing, he never complained. And then I knew that this is what I want to be. Because success in leadership, it is not in complaining, but it is in doing what is required for you to do on that given period of time.
Okay, sicela ke examples zokugqibela before sizongena kwi-Vespa. Ndifuna usichazele kukho lo mfo kuthiwa Solomon, kwakuthiwa unobulumko, kubekho inkosi yethu Yesu Kristu. Funa ke uthethe ngabo bobabini before singene kwi-Vespa.
In my book, there is a chapter called let me just refresh. There is a chapter authoritative leadership. King Solomon was the wisest guy ever lived.